Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are talking about how to get a little bit more out of your strength training if you don't really have many weights available for you, and how you can take body weight exercises, banded exercises, or just lightweight exercises and just make sure you're getting a little bit more. And you're getting the results you need and you're getting the stimulus you need so you can increase your strength, increase your resilience, increase your endurance for the trail. Now, as we always sort of say in this podcast, the key to training and the key to long-term progression is giving progression in your training and giving new stimulus in our training and making sure the muscles and the body do get new stimulus that it needs to adapt to change to drive our changes in strength, in resilience, or whatever it may be. And when it comes to strength training, one of the simplest ways of progressing is over time just slowly adding on a little extra weight. So if you're doing squats, you might be holding a 10 kilo dumbbell, then a 12 kilo dumbbell, then a 15 and yada, yada. We've all done it. It's all pretty simple. And in that situation, absolutely fantastic. That's a great way to go about it. And there are a number of different sort of ways you can progress exercises, as we talked about in this podcast many times. So where you might be changing exercise variation, you might be adding pauses, changing the tempo, whatever. But sometimes, and what we're talking about today, sometimes you may be doing an exercise that you kind of want to stick with for a number of weeks. But you get to the point where the resistance that you have available isn't quite enough. It starts to get a little bit easy for you. So this is typically when you might be doing body weight exercises and you just don't have any resistance to add to that, or you don't want to add resistance for whatever reason. It might involve banded exercises. So when you're doing, mini bands, therabands, resistance bands, or whatever it may be. Or it might involve you if you've only got some, light dumbbells floating around the house, and that's really it. Now, in those situations, if you are stuck at this weight, one really great way of just adding a bit of extra intensity to your workouts is focusing on what's called the mind-muscle connection. And essentially what this is every single repetition you do in your head, you want to intentionally be thinking about squeezing the muscles that should be working for this exercise really quite tight. And not just going through the motions and throwing the weights around, but really trying to keep tension in this muscle all the way up, all the way down, and really try to keep tension through the entire set. So for example, an easiest way to imagine this is a bicep curl. Hikers themselves don't really do so many bicep curls, but it's a great example. So essentially in a typical bicep curl, you might grab a dumbbell and then just pull your arm up and down. And that's all well and good. But if you want to get a little bit more out of this, what you can do is at the beginning of the movement, when you're at the bottom, you want to squeeze your bicep on so you can actually feel a bit of tension. And if you touch that muscle, you can actually feel like the muscle is switched on. And then as you bring the dumbbell up, you want to squeeze that muscle all the way up. At the top, you don't rest, but you actually keep that squeeze. And on the lower, you keep squeeze all the way down. So all the way up, all the way down, there's quite a bit of tension. And then essentially you do that every single repetition you do through the entire set. So if you're doing 10 repetitions, you keep that tension in for those entire 10 repetitions. Now, as you do that, you'll notice there's a dramatic difference in regards to intensity compared to just lifting the dumbbell up and down and actually going through that squeeze. And you may find after doing 4 repetitions, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, and you go back to old habits. And that's fine, because next time you may be able to squeeze for 5 or for 6 or for 7 or whatever it may be. And this is a really simple way of progressing it. On top of that, as you start to get stronger, you can even squeeze more and really keep that tension in more and more. And that's a really simple way of progressing. It's not so easy to track, because you can't have numbers and this and that, but you can internally feel that difficulty change through it. So another typical, that's a bicep curl, simple example. Not so many hikers, are going to be doing that, or at least I don't hope so. So what we can sort of think about here is maybe think about a squat, simple thing. So a squat typically is mainly going to be working your quads, fronts of your thighs, and your glutes, which are your bum. There'll be other muscles doing a bit of job, but they're the two main prime movers. So essentially what you can think about here is if you're setting up on a squat, whether it's a body weight or a goblet squat or whatever it may be, at the top of the position, you want to squeeze on those quads, get some tension in there, maybe squeeze on the glutes a little bit. All the way down, try to squeeze those quads, squeeze those glutes all the way down, and then all the way up again, squeeze. Now for this one, when there's a few more muscles working, it can be a little bit trickier to really get your head around this, and really a bit trickier to squeeze these particular muscles on when other things are going. But the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And the more you practice it, the more you do it, you can get more and more squeeze going through. So this technique is very, very simple, but it can be very, very effective. So if you are getting to this point on certain strength exercises where, I don't have enough weight to load this up. I don't have any other options. Or maybe I'm just not ready to do a bit extra weight. Maybe I want to stick with this or whatever it may be. Give this a go. Really internally think, squeezing the muscle that should be working for this exercise. Squeeze it all the way up, all the way down through all your repetitions, and you will be surprised about just how much harder this can be. And over time, this can actually make a pretty solid difference to your progression, to your strength, and it can just add that little bit extra to your workouts. So if you aren't limited on weights, if you aren't looking at progressing at some stage, but you want to just add a little bit more, give this a go and see how it feels. I really do think you'll notice a bit of a difference. Now, that's probably enough on this particular subject today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, hope you got a little bit out of it, and hope it gets you a bit of extra oomph into your workouts, which is going to help improve your strength to obviously help improve your hiking eventually. Now, if you did want to learn a little bit more about this, if you may need a video example of this, or you just wanted to discuss any other subject related to these podcasts or anything else in the training for hiking world, I would absolutely love if you came and find me in the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. Now, as I always say, inside that group, always happy to expand on this subject, share extra information, extra trainings, or whatever it may be. So if you want to find that, that's the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. You can find that in a link for that in the show notes below. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.